This also know, that in the last days perilous times shall come. Evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived.
This week in Bible Prophecy, your front row seat to the future. And now your tour guides to the fascinating world of Bible prophecy, Peter and Paul Lalonde.
Hello and welcome to our This Week in Bible Prophecy special report on the Gospel of Antichrist. That's right, you may never have thought about it, but the fact is that the Antichrist is indeed coming with his very own gospel. Some of the things that you'll hear in this video are going to shock you. Others will cause you to realize just how powerful and pervasive the deception has already become. And everything we say will confirm to you the incredible accuracy of the biblical passages that foretold us of this final last day's assault on the gospel of Jesus Christ. By the time we're done, we hope that you will see how all of the threads that make up this false gospel are being pulled together at one time in such a way that they will, in the words of Jesus, come upon the world as a snare.
You know, oftentimes, Paul, when we speak about Bible prophecy, we're talking in terms of the geopolitical events that will take place in the last days, the things in this physical world, whether it's Israel back in their land and the things that will take place surrounding that nation, the role of Russia, the role of China, the move toward the Battle of Armageddon, earthquakes, famines, and wars, the mark of the beast. And so our focus becomes very this worldly as we're talking about the last days drama. But the fact of the matter is, the Antichrist does not arise on the world scene in an attempt to corner the world market on silver, or he doesn't attempt to control the world politically. That's not his ultimate goal, though these things, any of them, may be a part of it. What it is instead is, it's a battle for souls. And this whole thing is about deception. It's about eternity. And it's these issues, these eternal issues, that are being played out on the world stage, and sometimes we lose that focus. And so it should come as no surprise whatsoever that the Antichrist, when he arises on the scene in the last days, is going to arrive with his own gospel message. He's going to arrive with a counterfeit of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And as Jesus said, many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. So there is very much this idea that there is going to be a false gospel in the last days.
The lie is what we call it.
The lie. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, we should take a look at that, beginning at verse 9. Speaking of the Antichrist, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders, with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie. And that's what we want to talk about today, is what is the nature of this lie? What is this lie that's coming upon the world stage in the last days that is going to be so powerful, according to the Bible, that if it were possible, even the most staunch believer in Christ would accept that lie?
Well, I think when we talk about the lie, something that always comes up when you're talking to people is, well, I wouldn't believe it. I'd know what was happening. And when you talk to people who aren't Christians and you start talking about Bible prophecy, to a man, they seem to say, well, if I saw all these things happen, then I would immediately fall on my knees. I would believe in God. I would believe in Jesus Christ. I would know that the Antichrist is a liar. I would know exactly who he is. But the Bible makes it very clear, everyone is going to believe this lie. Everyone is going to believe this lie except those people whose names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. And here's the fact of the matter. If we believe we're living in the very last moments of time and that the rapture could take place at any second, and in other words, we could be in the world of this lie just like that, those who are left behind, then this lie should be prevalent in our world today. Everywhere we look, to the left and to the right, everywhere we turn, this lie should be engulfing our society, and that's the very issue that we want to look at today.
Well, and let's go to Sue Rogers right now, who's going to tell us about the deadliest lie of all.
It is a lie so deceitful that it cost Lucifer his seat in heaven. A lie so powerful that its acceptance caused expulsion from the Garden of Eden. And a lie so deadly that it can kill the very soul. And this ancient lie, far from being some outmoded relic from the past, is still seducing millions of people today in our modern scientific age. Despite all of our knowledge, learning, and education, the lie seems just as effective today. What is this lie? Simply stated, it's the promise that within each person lies the potential to become God. And this insidious little lie, when combined with pride and arrogance of the heart, forms a seduction more alluring than any man can withstand. The temptation was too great for Lucifer. Isaiah 14 records that terrible day. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Lucifer, having been deceived by the pride of his own heart, wasted no time in using the very same lie on Eve in the Garden of Eden. When the serpent spoke to Eve, as recorded in Genesis 3, it was with great subtlety. But he convinced Eve to eat of the forbidden fruit by telling her this: For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods. Far from being some outmoded concept from an ancient world, the promise of enlightenment continues to be at the heart of cults, the world's false religions, the drug movement, and what has come to be known as the New Age movement. This excerpt from actress Shirley MacLaine's primetime miniseries, Out on a Limb, makes the central focus of the New Age movement crystal clear.
I am God. I am. Look, if I'm God, what does that make you?
Well, we always see in others what we see in ourselves. I am God. I am God.
I am God.
I am God.
I am God.
But MacLaine's blatant proclamation of the new gospel has been far from isolated. Over the last 15 years, the message of the human voyage to self-discovery and divinity has been at the heart of Hollywood's most powerful pulpits.
Cosmic thoughts, gentlemen?
We were speculating. Is God really out there?
Maybe he's not out there, Bones. Maybe he's right here. Human heart.
For my ally is the Force. And a powerful ally it is. Life creates it. Makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us. And binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. You must feel the Force around you. Here, between you, me, the tree, the rock, everywhere.
Unfortunately, the converts to this new voyage of discovery are today being swept into hundreds and hundreds of cults and deceptive religious systems. At the heart, though, the message is surprisingly similar. The founder of Transcendental Meditation rewrites the scriptures and tells followers, be still and know that you are God. Maitreya, the supposed Christ, who has been announced in full-page newspaper ads by New Age leaders, offers a similar vision. Through his right-hand man, Benjamin Creme, he has proclaimed that man is an emerging God. My plan and my duty is to reveal to you a new way. which will permit the divine in man to shine forth. Ernest Holmes, the founder of the Church of Religious Science, teaches that all men are spiritually evolving until each will fully express his divinity. Sun Myung Moon, who believes that he is Jesus Christ, is blunt. He says that God and man are one. Man is an incarnate God. And if the heart-stirring ads of the Mormon Church make you think that they are just another denomination, think again. Brigham Young, a former president of the group, has said this: "The devil told the truth about Godhood. I do not blame Mother Eve. I would not have had her miss eating the forbidden fruit for anything." Even more extreme teachings have come from cults led by men like Jim Jones and David Koresh. These Christ impostors have led thousands to spiritual and physical destruction. And although mass suicides and police standoffs are not always the end result, the real damage is far more devastating. As the scripture says, "Fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell."
You know, I'm sure as a lot of people sit and hear about the beliefs that are going on in some of these cults or some of these extreme groups, people are kind of laughing and thinking, wow, that's ridiculous. Wow, isn't that amazing what some people will believe? The fact that people overlook or misunderstand a lot of the time is just how pervasive these beliefs have already become. Go to your local bookstore, take a look at the New Age section, take a look at the number of books espousing this, and not only that, take a look at some of the covers and see that little gold star on there with 100,000 copies or 500,000 copies or 1,000,000 copies.
And they're not just books in the New Age section, they're in the psychology section,
right.
in the business section, in the corporate section, in the educational section. They're everywhere throughout the store. It's not just as if it's religion over here anymore.
That's right. Another place to look is on the infomercials late at night. You watch your TV after midnight and look at the infomercials. Gone are the old infomercials about car wax and the guy lighting his car on fire.
The greatest one is the vacuum cleaner that cuts your hair.
Yeah, the Flowbee system. Gone are those infomercials. They're replaced now with all of these psychic phone lines where you can call in and have your future foretold by a psychic. Those are so popular right now that they're buying up all the airtime and there's no space left for anybody else to sell normal, well, normal as a hair-cutting vacuum is.
Yeah, well, it just goes to show how pervasive it's become, how open America is to the idea. But the point we also want to raise is it doesn't just seem like religion anymore. Now it's the latest seminar that corporations are leading their employees through. It's the Pentagon working on psychic spy techniques to try to study the other guy by viewing remotely. It is children in the classrooms being led through relaxation techniques. It is literally coming at us from every direction.
Well, and now Sue is going to take a look at how all of these beliefs are really moving into the American mainstream.
Most often, these new pseudosciences deal in the areas of psychic research, telepathy, or purported mind-over-matter capabilities. And one fact is undeniable. All over the world, some of the leading scientific institutions are conducting experiments which they claim prove that mankind has an incredible spiritual and mental potential that we're only beginning to tap into. One noted New Ager, Graham Price, points out how far we've come. The powers described by the mystics through the ages are now being described by scientists, and this proves that underlying the material world is a vast, non-substantial world. The priests of old were also scientists. Today, the priests and the scientists are coming back together again. But just what is taking place in the laboratories that is purportedly convincing these scientists that we have hidden godlike powers that we simply have to learn to tap into? According to former astronaut Edgar Mitchell, it is the always perplexing yet well-documented capabilities of some people for mental activities ranging from telepathy and clairvoyance to precognition and telekinesis. These types of sciences have been around since the beginning of time, but never before have they been so readily believed and accepted. What is frightening is that as more and more people become deceived, the stranger a belief in Jesus Christ will seem. It has been said that those who believe in nothing will generally believe in anything.
You know, when we start hearing about these New Age beliefs and all these radical people, a lot of times you're thinking about the hippie from the 60s, or the guy, many of you will have a guy like this in your house, the guy, hey, I'm at one with the universe. And we talk about these guys and we laugh at them a little bit when we're watching them on TV, but the thing that's different now is a lot of the things that he's believing, a lot of the things that these people have been espousing for a long time now are suddenly in respected scientific journals. They're now appearing at the major universities. People are in there spending millions of dollars researching things like psychic phenomena and clairvoyance and even telekinesis and the old Ravi Shankar school of spoon bending, that kind of stuff. Now suddenly it's moved right into the mainstream.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I was reading a book that was a compilation of the central statements made by all the leading physicists of our generation, the ones who are exploring this new idea of the universe,
Quantum physics.
The quantum physics area. And what the conclusion goes to show, and they point this right out in this book, which is not a religious book, is they said, do you notice that all of the leading speakers, the leading voices in the world of quantum physics today are all mystics, and they came to this view with their mysticism intact and then developed the science from there. And we see that that's what's taking place in many of the institutions. And we don't know what to make of the reports that we see coming across our desk, but we're talking about reports, internal reports from major institutions in the world today where they're claiming to have amazing success with psychic powers. And we're not talking about the, you know, Gene Dixon, the thing you see at the checkout counter at the supermarket. We're talking about psychics who find missing children, psychics who can find soldiers who are missing in action, and we have the reports that we see from both the Pentagon and from the higher educational institutions in the world today claiming to begin to find success in these areas. And when you have the scientific community jumping on board, suddenly it's not the hippie idea anymore. Now it is very much the heart of modern-day science, which means that religion is masquerading as science, and exactly what the Apostle Paul said, the oppositions of science, falsely so called. We're seeing that happen in our world today.
Well, I think for a long time people have been thinking these ideas belong in an institution, and now we're seeing that that's exactly the case. And for a look at how all these things are coming at us from every direction, we'll go back to Sue Rogers.
No longer does a spiritual search mean that gospel churches are filling up. Instead, it seems that people are willing to search everywhere but there. Of course, as in the 60s, drugs do play a role for many. Scripture tells of an increase in sorceries in the last days. The word sorceries comes from the Greek word pharmakeia, from which we get our word pharmacy. Thus, we know that drugs are at the core of much of the spiritual deception that takes place in the last days.
Once when I was on an acid trip, some voices began speaking to me and telling me about the Om, which is a Hindu mantra that's supposed to be the universal vibration. And these voices instructed me to repeat Om, to chant Om, or just simply to tune into Om by listening. And that if I did so, I would become one with cosmic consciousness. I was amazed to find out that the things that the voices had taught me when I'd taken LSD were actually the teachings of Hinduism.
However, many people today are very concerned about their health and rightly see drugs as dangerous. Therefore, for these millions, meditation, yoga classes, relaxation techniques, and getting in touch with oneself is the order of the day. The spiritual danger, however, is just as grave.
After I got into Hinduism, I quit taking drugs. I got a lot more stoned meditating than I ever had on LSD.
Another similarity that cannot be overlooked is that on all of these paths to enlightenment, spirit guides always play a central role. From one corner of the world to another, and from one technique to another, people are contacting spiritual entities at an alarming rate. Take the testimony of Whitley Strieber, the UFO cultist and popular author of books like Communion. According to Strieber, seeming encounters with non-human beings are not new. They have history dating back thousands of years. What is new in this latter part of the 20th century is that the encounters have taken on an intensity never before experienced by humankind. And what are these Space Brothers teaching? According to Strieber, the visitors, as he calls them, have told him that Earth is a school. a place where souls are growing and evolving towards some form that we could scarcely begin to imagine. These extraterrestrials may be managing the evolution of humankind. Through her crystals or meditation and her inner search, Shirley MacLaine also claims to have come into contact with a spirit guide. Here is what she's learned. You are everything. Everything you want to know is inside of you. You must never worship anyone or anything other than self, for you are God. To love self is to love God. I know that I exist, therefore I am. I know that the God source exists, therefore it is. Since I am part of that force, then I am that I am. What makes this even more alarming is the fact that in the name of relaxation therapies, many of these same techniques are now being used in public schools all over North America. In one course, Success Imagery, children are placed into an altered state of consciousness through breathing exercises identical to the ones used in yoga. They are then told to imagine themselves in a nice, quiet place. The child is then told, "Now a figure is coming towards you. He is friendly and can be young or old. Speak to the wise person and welcome him into your safe place. Get to know your wise person. You can invite him back anytime."
Who are these wise persons? Well, we can gain an insight into this question when we realize that the same techniques being used to contact these wise persons are also used by mystics, shamans, and occultists to contact their spiritual guides. The late Dr. Beverly Galion, a pioneer in this type of classroom activity, openly admits that they're spirit guides. However, she adds, we don't call them that in the public schools, we call them imagery guides.
No longer is the occult hidden behind basement doors. Today it is in the open and ready to deceive the spiritually hungry.
You know, as you look at all of these New Age techniques that people are utilizing to try to contact some kind of ultimate reality and get in touch with the universe in some way, and you see all the different ways that they're doing it, whether it is some guy taking LSD or PCP, whether it is somebody involved in meditation or in yoga, whether it's the latest corporate seminar or relaxation techniques in the classroom, whether it's somebody trying to channel a spirit and get in touch with the UFO brothers that are out there somewhere. All of these different techniques are leading to the exact same revelation to these people. Whether they're in different parts of the world and they're not in communication with each other and they're using these different techniques, it's all coming back saying, you are God's. The power is within you. Now, isn't it amazing that we see an explosion of this in our generation at the exact same time that all of the other prophecies are being fulfilled? People are using the exact techniques that the Bible calls techniques of the occult, and they're coming up with the exact answer from Genesis chapter 3 that the serpent told to Eve, you shall be as gods, setting the stage for the exact lie to sweep the world again. Looking at Isaiah chapter 47, and I recommend you all read this entire chapter through, but the 12th verse, stand now with thine enchantments and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. A little further down, thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prognosticators stand with thee and save thee from these things. So now, the exact same things are taking place in our world today. Chapter 47 of Isaiah is a description of the New Age movement today. But it's different, because the stargazers and all that are no longer in the back corner of a circus tent somewhere. Now it's Shirley MacLaine at the Holiday Inn with a brightly lit room and 300 people there paying $500 each to get in touch with their spirit entities. It's come out of the dark, it's come out of the closet and right into the mainstream of our world today.
Well, what it's done is it's moved out of the New Age and into the world of science. And if there is one idol in our society today, it is science. The Bible, however, warns us that while there are legitimate sciences, it also tells us of the oppositions of science, falsely so-called. And nowhere is this more evident right now than in the evolution-creation debate. So let's go back to Sue for a look into how the gospel of Antichrist is becoming entrenched in that debate as well.
When we think of the evolution versus creation debate, our minds often wander back to ancient days. For the evolutionists, comforting thoughts must be of slime, bacteria, and amoeba. But for the creationist, those same thoughts are of a loving and intelligent creator. But what many people do not realize today is that the debate is taking on new proportions. Today, particularly among pseudoscientists who are attempting to legitimize their religious beliefs, the debate is not about the origin of the species, but of the next step of evolution. This is an interesting point, because if one holds to the theory of evolution, then it must be an ongoing process. Yet we see no evidence of that today in the world. To answer this question, many evolutionists are supporting a theory called the quantum leap. Quite simply, the theory holds that evolution does not occur gradually over time, but in sudden fits of crisis and change. They say this is why they can find no fossil evidence of the so-called missing links. There were none. What many New Agers claim today is that we're on the verge of another quantum leap, except that this time we're not going to evolve physically, but spiritually.
I think that man is evolving into a state of higher awareness, higher consciousness, higher vibration. And I think that the best representation that we have of man's movement in that direction is what's going on in the consciousness movement, New Age movement.
According to New Agers, the next phase of mankind's evolution is elevation to godhood. They see the human race as a transitional form between apes and God.
That's, I think, our purpose on Earth, and I think we're understanding that. It's to make ourselves whole, to become one with ourselves, and then to realize our godhood.
I believe that everyone has Christ consciousness within themselves, and all they need to do is go inside and realize that and bring it forward and be that Christ consciousness.
Just when and how will this quantum leap take place? To understand that, we have to take a look at the basis of this New Age worldview.
We are dealing here with just pure, old-fashioned Hinduism dressed up in Western terminology and Western gear to make it palatable to the Western mind. And they can't reach the Western mind by giving them the religion of India.
The basic teaching of Hinduism is simply the fact that all is one and all is God. This means that according to the Hindu gospel, I am God, you are God, and this couch I'm sitting on is God. Really then, God is nothing more than the sum of everything. And the mind or will of God is simply the sum of all our minds and wills.
On December 31st of 1986, a unique event took place, an event that continues to grow in size every year. It was called the World Healing Day, or the World Instant of Cooperation. Millions of people from all over the world gathered at hundreds of different sites to meditate on thoughts of world peace. However, this was far more than a symbolic event. According to organizers, the hope was to mobilize a critical mass of collective consciousness. In fact, according to the man who dreamed up the World Instant of Cooperation, John Randolph Price, it has been revealed to him by his spirit guide that when 10% of the Earth's population thinks thoughts of peace at the same time, the mind of God will be impacted to such a degree that a revelation will spread to the mind of all humanity. A revelation that we are all gods. In fact, according to Price, in that day, humanity will understand the nature of Antichrist, anyone who accepts the divinity of man.
Well, in the midst of all this conversation about the universal consciousness and all those kinds of things, we've been talking about the importance of science. And strangely enough, this whole idea of a universal consciousness is based on what many are calling a scientific study. And this scientific study is about a bunch of monkeys living on an island somewhere out in the Pacific. And the funny thing about this island is it's divided in half. There's a ridge of mountains that goes right down the middle of the island. And so there's two populations of monkeys, each living on a different side of the island, no ability to contact each other at all. Because of this mountain range, they can't get over it. So what happens is some scientists are working there and doing some studies on the island, and they're eating sweet potatoes. And they throw them out on the beach when they're done with them, and the monkeys come up and say, oh, look, something new to eat. We haven't seen these before. And a monkey runs up and he picks up the sweet potato and he goes to take a bite, and it's all covered in sand. And he just gets a mouthful of sand. And so the monkey doesn't really care for that, and he throws it down. Another monkey comes up and does the same thing, and this is going on for a while. Suddenly one of the monkeys happens, by accident I guess, to be near the edge of the ocean, and he drops potato in the water and he picks it up and now he eats it and oh boy, it's nice. The sand is gone. It tastes nice and salty. And he thinks this is really great. So other monkeys see what he's doing and they think, wow, this looks like a great idea. And they join in and they all start doing it too. And a whole bunch of them start dipping it. And now they're all down there having a sweet potato fest at the seashore. But what happens is, when a specific monkey comes up, the 100th monkey is what they refer to it as in this theory.
Which is metaphorical, of
That's
course.
That's right. Who knows how many it was.
The whole thing's metaphorical, actually.
This 100th monkey comes up and he dips his sweet potato into the water and starts eating it. Suddenly now they have enough monkeys that the whole idea of washing your sweet potatoes is transferred to the universal monkey consciousness, and the monkeys on the other side of the island, with no contact with these guys at all, are suddenly washing their food in the ocean. And that is what's called the 100th monkey theory, and New Agers are using this belief now to espouse the idea of us having a universal consciousness.
I was at a conference where I heard the governor of a state tell this story as scientific fact, despite the fact that if you do your homework, you cannot find any evidence of this story whatsoever, but it's being purported to be this great scientific breakthrough, that there is this idea that if a certain number of any species gets the same thought in their mind, that thought will be transferred to all of that species. And that's what they were saying about the monkeys. And that's what the basis was of something you heard of a few years ago called harmonic convergence. That people thought if they could gather at all these specific places on the earth and think thoughts of peace, the thought of peace would be transferred to all of mankind. Now, of course, it's ridiculous. It's never going to happen. But the fact of the matter is, it is these kind of beliefs that set the stage for some kind of ultimate deception in the days ahead. Because if you're living in a world where things are taking place supernaturally, people may believe that they're creating those things with their mind.
Well, in the midst of all this fun and silliness, there is a very serious underbelly. Let's go back to Sue for a look at the much darker side of the New Age.
It is important to realize that today's New Ager is probably pretty representative of the average global citizen. Number one, we can say that he or she is very committed to preserving the earth. Number two, their commitment to world community outweighs commitment to a country or an individual. And number three, the well-used slogan, "Unity in diversity," is taken very seriously. This means that you can be diverse, but that diversity had better not compromise the overall unity of world citizens. More simply, you can believe what you want, but you'd better not force that belief on anyone else, and you'd better not claim that your view is superior or more correct than anyone else's. This has obvious implications for the Christian. The gospel proclamation that there is one name given under heaven whereby we must be saved, and its corresponding teachings, flies in the face of New Age theology. Significantly, the scriptures speak of a revived Roman Empire in the last days. In the original Roman Empire, Christians were put to death, not because they said Jesus was God, but because they said that he was the only God. It is little wonder, then, that the scriptures tell us that whosoever killeth you will think that he doeth God's service. One perfect example of this is what spirit guides are revealing to Barbara Marx Hubbard. Hubbard is a leading New Ager and was one of the vice presidential nominees for the Democratic Party in 1984. She has written a book called The Book of Co-Creation, which she says was dictated to her by her spirit guides. Humanity will not be able to make the transition from earth only to universal life until the chaff has been separated from the wheat. The great reaper must reap before we can take the quantum leap to the next phase of evolution. Evolution empowers the horseman upon the red horse to kill that which cannot love God, and himself as the Son of God. This act is as horrible as killing a cancer cell. It must be done for the future of the whole. Peter Russell, the author of The Global Brain, and John Randolph Price also revealed that their spirit guides are speaking of a coming removal of the cancer cells who stand in the way of the quantum leap into the New Age. Benjamin Creme, self-appointed prophet of Lord Maitreya, said that those cancer cells have to be annihilated or face the sword of cleavage. Even the seemingly harmless Shirley MacLaine was quoted in Newsweek as saying, "Tune into your higher self, or else." Of course, the list could go on,
But let's leave you with one final example of the type of statement that's becoming all too common in the New Age today. These are the words of Ruth Montgomery, a leading New Ager. Those who survive the shift will be a different type of people from those in the physical form today, freed from strife and hatred. The souls who helped bring on the chaos of the present century will have passed into spirit to rethink their attitudes.
Well, you know, we talked about the 100th monkey theory, and we talked about the fact that there are millions and millions of people who believe if we all just get together and hold hands and think thoughts of peace, those thoughts will be transferred to the entire world community and suddenly we'll have world peace. But now we're hearing also that what they're saying is there are cancer cells who stand in the way. They're preventing this unity from taking place. And my goodness, what do they say here? Those people who believe they have the only truth are going to be removed into the spirit to rethink their attitudes. I hope what you realize is taking place here is in this New Age belief system, you have a total contrary point of view for what's taken place when the rapture takes place.
Well, and the cardinal sin of the day is being inflexible and saying we have the ultimate truth here, and the New Age gospel certainly likes to put unity above truth. And so that's going to be a problem, obviously, for the Christians.
And that's why
they have their explanation in place.
There is this hatred growing for the Christians, and it fits exactly with the Bible. Revelation chapter 13, verse 6, speaking of the Antichrist, do you know that we know the first things out of his mouth when he arises on the world scene? The first thing he says to the world community? And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. In other words, all the people who've gone in the rapture as well, the saints. The world is suddenly united, saying, thank goodness these people are out of the way now. They've passed into the Spirit to rethink their attitudes, and now we can begin our new world here on this earth. So whereas the gospel promises a new heavens and a new earth, the New Age movement is very much about this earth, and that's why the environment and so on is playing such a big role in this whole New Age movement that's arising on the world scene today.
Environmentalism has its own church, the environmental activist movement, its own God, Mother Earth, and its own clergymen, like John Denver or Al Gore. Al Gore, it should be noted, is also one of the most forceful voices for the movement's real agenda, globalism. In his book, Earth in the Balance, he has a chapter entitled New Common Purpose, in which he suggests that unless the world comes together under a single central authority, we will ecologically self-destruct. The chapter closes with these sobering words. The time has come to make this struggle the central organizing principle of world civilization. Most disturbing and deceiving may be the fact that Al Gore claims to be a born-again Southern Baptist while preaching a gospel more reminiscent of tree worshippers or native or nature religions. For example, in his book, Earth in the Balance, self-titled Ecology and the Human Spirit, he says that modern man emerged 200,000 years ago, and he asserts that our blood has the same proportion of salt as the sea, because, as he says, that's where the first life forms evolved. The gospel of this earth must, of course, have environmentalism at its very core. That is why the ancient nature religions of the East and the newer teachings like Gaia are finding a newfound resurgence today. It is truly an opiate for the people in this 20th century.
Well, if you think about it, Paul, really that's what the New Age movement is all about, and environmentalism is right at the core of it for that very reason. Of course, we're concerned about the environment, and every person on this planet, Christian, non-Christian, we should all be concerned about this planet. This is our home, this is where we live, and so we're not at all advocating this idea that we shouldn't be part of the environmental movement. I think we should be. But the point is this: we have to recognize from a spiritual point of view that this is a spiritual battle taking place. And there are those in the world who have a hope of a new heavens and a new earth, which is the biblical promise. And then there's the New Age belief, which is really, if you summarize that gospel, it's a new age of peace and prosperity on this earth. So you suddenly have those whose focus is on this earth are very antagonistic toward those whose hope is a new heavens and a new earth. They're angry and saying, well, if you have hope in that new heaven, you don't care about this world. It's not a fair charge, but it's beginning to define the boundaries in this world today where people are saying, if you're not willing to put aside your beliefs in the name of saving the environment of this planet, then you're an outsider. And that is very much the form on which the New World Order, which is forming today, that's the basis on which it's being built.
For the New Age movement to gain worldwide acceptance, it needs a new world order. Now, many people are working toward that goal, but how much does the public actually know about it?
The Illuminati, or Enlightened Ones, are supposedly an elite group of financial and government leaders who are dedicated to using their positions to win support for their pro-world government proposals. The question is, does this even make sense? How could financiers force an entire nation to pass unpopular laws that they want without the whole world raising an outcry? In 1992, French polls indicated a certain defeat for the Maastricht Treaty in the national referendum. 3 days before the referendum, the Europe Monetary Fund collapsed, and England and Italy were forced to pull their currency right out of the fund before they could be devalued further. Sweden raised its short-term interest rates to 500%, and chaos reigned supreme. The media suggested that the EC and the world economy would collapse without France, and the crisis was proof. In an 11th-hour victory, France ratified the treaty 51 to 49%, and unification of Europe moved ahead. We asked Gary Kah, author of the book En Route to Global Occupation, about the emerging global free trade zone.
Yes, those organizations that are strongly pushing for world government, such as the Bilderbergers, the Trilateral Commission, and other groups, have long had as their goal to make the countries of the world economically interdependent upon each other in the area of regions. For example, the common market in Europe, the North America Free Trade Agreement will bring about a kind of common economic market in North America, and of course in Asia we already have ASEAN. They believe that if these countries could become completely interdependent upon each other economically, the natural next step then would be political union. And from there, it would be rather easy to take these regions into a world government. In other words, it's a lot easier to take 10 regions of the world into a world government than 200 separate individual countries.
There are several elitist pro-world government groups, and most of them have been around for decades. The Illuminati itself was formed in Germany in the 18th century, and many of the founders of the U.S. Constitution were members. Other secretive but verifiable New Age globalist groups include the Bilderbergers, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, Rhodes Scholars, the Freemasons, and the Club of Rome. Other groups, less secretive, but as determined in their search for world government and their New Age philosophy, include Planetary Citizens, the World Federalist Association, the Committee to Frame a World Constitution, and the World Association for World Federation, and the International Green Cross, and the World Constitution and Parliamentary Association. The Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission, groups instrumental in founding the UN, are at the same time open and secretive. Instead of using terms like world government, they prefer euphemisms like collective security, rule of law, world law, global institutions, and interdependence, and of course, New World Order. Are we suggesting that U.S. leaders would be involved in such a plan? Council on Foreign Relations and Trilateral Commission members include Clinton and every American president and vice president since Eisenhower, except Ronald Reagan, and so many top-level cabinet members it would take the whole video just to name them. Ronald Reagan is an honorary 33rd degree Mason. Bill Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar, and so on. Public knowledge or not, like it or not, the New Age is in control of the New World.
There's no doubt that the New Age movement, as Sue said, does control and run our world today, but I'd like to make a few points on that because it may not be in the way that some people think. I don't agree with this idea that there are 13 men in some room somewhere running the entire world and making all the decisions that affect the world. The world is too big and complex a place for that kind of thing to be happening. So once again, I don't think it's a core conspiracy like that with just a few men running the whole world by any stretch of the imagination. But if you think about the economic powers that exist, the power blocks in the private world today that can make decisions of millions and billions and trillions of dollars. They can bankrupt a country. They can decide we're going to take all the money out of the investment pool of this country and move it to this country and just leave the country behind with no investment money whatsoever. Canada worries about that all the time, that if our interest rates change, the international investments are going to be withdrawn, and it is a very few people who control that kind of economic clout in our world today. So there is a degree of control exercised by a minority in this world, but I don't think it's a tight little conspiracy of one group. The world, as I say, is too big and too complex for that.
Well, you know, when you start talking to people about world government, many people say, no, world government, that's absolutely impossible, that'll never happen. What they're picturing is the world government that we often have seen in the movies, with a tank on every street corner and that kind of thing, a very totalitarian world, men with machine guns everywhere. In reality, though, the world government under the Antichrist is going to be quite the opposite of that. People are going to love it. People are going to think this is the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Right,
we love the Antichrist. We love what he's done. We love the unity of the world. We love how happy a place this is. This is all very good. Everyone's going to be rah, rah, rah. They're not going to be subdued by tanks and whips and guns and that kind of thing.
So more or less we could say that this is an open conspiracy.
That's
because while there may be an elect few who are moving us in that direction, no one minds. Everyone thinks this is the greatest thing. And one of the things that I think we'll talk about more in this video, I think in Sue's upcoming report now, is the role that the media plays in getting us all to love this idea. The propaganda machine is up and running full speed.
In all of this, a dramatic development has taken place in the last few years. A development so significant that it may be the most important component in the rise to power of New Age ideas in our society. Simply stated, the mass media has taken up the cause of spreading the New Age gospel. Suddenly, ideas, values, and outright propaganda can be immediately disseminated around the entire globe. A so-called grassroots movement can now be spread in a matter of hours instead of years. So powerful is this new technology that Ted Turner has boldly proclaimed that he brought down the Berlin Wall. But with such powerful influence comes terrible danger for abuse and distortion of reality. Take Ted Turner's Portrait of the Soviet Union, for example. This special claimed to show his life behind the scenes in the former Soviet Empire. When it aired, the distortion was so great that even the Soviets themselves asked, "What country is this?" Turner responded in a way that should alert even the most trusting. He said, "When you paint a picture, you can paint whatever you want. I didn't say that it was a true picture." But political areas are not the only areas where the views of the new globalists are being pushed forth. We have mentioned Shirley MacLaine a number of times in this special, since she really has become the voice of the religious end of the New Age. In her book, It's All in the Plain, she reveals how her previous book, Out on a Limb, was made into a primetime television miniseries. It's a long quote, but quite revealing. ABC Television approached me to consider making a miniseries film of my book, Out on a Limb. They spoke of metaphysical search being popular now, and extraterrestrialists and UFOs as something the public was genuinely interested in. Brandon Studdard, the head of entertainment at ABC, was well aware of the growing spiritual hunger in the American culture and wanted to be the one who had the courage to okay the nourishment. "All I ask," Brandon went on, "is that you make sure the audience understands cosmic justice and what we are each responsible for in our own reality. That's what the viewers will want to respond to. There are more people into this stuff than you think, and I want ABC to be first." And make no mistake about it, CNN and ABC are not alone. Even the liberal New York Times has carried articles commenting on this new trend of applying Madison Avenue expertise to affect the population through mass media. And former NBC chairman Grant Tinker proclaimed, If we can start changing attitudes in this country, we can start changing behavior.
You know, I don't think there's any doubt that the most overlooked piece of the prophetic puzzle for the last days is the role of the mass media. I think as I read the writings of men of God who've looked at the Word of God and tried to understand what the days would be like years and years ago, what they all failed to see is the role of a central media that could share informations, values, beliefs, and cultures throughout the entire world in a split second like we can have in the world today.
Well, look at how the media shapes us today. Think about how everything we see on TV, that's what we want. The things we see people saying on TV, suddenly we talk like that. We see people behaving in a certain way on our favorite TV shows, that's how we want to behave. We see our favorite actors selling a particular garment or a particular product, and we're thinking, I want to get that. If my favorite media personality likes it, I should like it too. Think about that power when it gets applied to big ideas and to philosophies, and that power is being applied, as we've pointed out, by the media to try and shape society and to try and shape culture and shape the way we think.
Let me give you a perfect example of that. These New Age ideas are coming through loud and clear through our mass media today. We just quoted about ABC television and Shirley MacLaine's Out on a Limb. If you want to see how these New Age ideas are coming through, take a look at the Saturday morning cartoons as the first place to go and take a look. If you think it's bad in prime time, watch 3 hours of what the kids watch. They're getting introduced to Hinduism and Eastern mysticism on their television every Saturday. Now take a look on the mass media of how Christians are portrayed.
Yeah, that's the big one.
In every instance, we are portrayed in an extremely negative light on television with very few exceptions, and that defines the cultures and the beliefs of this world today. So on the religious front, through this mass media culture, you have tremendous confusion. Some things that seem somebody can say they're a Christian and have different values, or somebody can have different values and really be a Christian through what they're saying. I just say that to say, as confusing as that was, there's a great deal of confusion in our world today of where the lines of right and wrong and left and right are. They're blurred through the mass media today.
The Clinton mandate for change was actually a smokescreen, the first of many being used to dispute an agenda far removed from the promises and empty rhetoric he used to gain the presidency. But who was the new president really, and what is his agenda? Bill Clinton proudly proclaims himself a Southern Baptist, while rigidly opposing virtually every plank in the Southern Baptist platform. His political statements provide more than a hint that he is a firm adherent to the New Age theology. He is pro-abortion, although, in his words,
"Hear me now. I am not pro-abortion. I am pro-choice only."
His support for homosexuality and militant gay and lesbian organizations run counter to the clear teachings of the Bible that he so prominently displays on Sundays. And Clinton is not above using scriptures to promote his man-centered theology. His acceptance speech at the Democratic National Convention contained this memorable statement.
As the scripture says, our eyes have not yet seen, nor our ears heard, nor our minds imagined what we can build.
The scripture actually says, "The things which God hath prepared for them that love him."
The New Age belief structure is incompatible with theology that makes man dependent upon God. Faith in an eternal God makes globalism unnecessary, as well as incompatible with God's revealed will. Bill Clinton's new covenant is a counterfeit of God's covenant. Clinton speaks often of channeling creative energy or centering himself on an issue, concepts undeniably linked to New Age theology. Clinton is an abashed globalist, a man who is firmly behind the New World Order, who has been since long before Gorbachev and Bush made the term a household word. Carroll Quigley, a Georgetown University professor, in his book Tragedy and Hope, said the individual's freedom of choice will be controlled within very narrow alternatives by the fact that he will be numbered from birth and followed as a number through his educational training, his required military or other service, his health and medical requirements, his tax contributions, and his final retirement and death benefits. Does the idea of limited freedom of choice of people being numbered so as to control their ability to buy or sell, bring chills to the Southern Baptist Bill Clinton? Did he enter politics to prevent such a thing from happening?
As a teenager, I heard John Kennedy's summons to citizenship. And then, as a student at Georgetown, I heard that call clarified by a professor named Carroll Quigley.
Clinton enrolled his daughter in a private school, a decision that angered many who are forced to send their children to public schools. Clinton deflected criticism by saying it was a religious decision. Chelsea Clinton attends Sidwell, a Society of Friends or Quaker school in Washington. Quakers see their deity as a divine presence, the God within or inward light. How does that stack up against Bill Clinton's celebrated Southern Baptist roots? According to Stephen Carey, a Quaker in the publications These Roots and Witness of Quakerism, if being a Christian means commitments to a range of theological doctrines that are central to much Christian thought, doctrines such as the virgin birth, original sin, and the atonement, then a large number of Friends, or Quakers, would say that they are not Christian. Quakers believe that Jesus was another enlightened teacher, like Buddha, a New Age doctor. It is safe to assume that that doctrine is part of the curriculum being taught to the president's daughter. If Clinton unknowingly enrolled his daughter in a school so diametrically opposed to his own Christian beliefs, we can only hope that he is a better world leader than he is a father.
There's no doubt we live in remarkably confusing times, and the mass media plays such a big role in this. You think of our political climate in the world today, and it's not just one politician, it is many politicians who take a certain label, a certain identification, because their pollsters have said that is the way to go, but when you look at what their real beliefs are, you find out they don't line up. You have politicians in Canada who claim to be conservatives that are as liberal as anyone I've ever seen, and on the other hand, you have liberals who claim to be liberals, but they're more conservative than the conservatives on the other side. They take a label because of political advantage, but then who they really are, you have to look at the day-to-day policies. So we do live in confusing times, and I think I want to summarize on that note that where the confusion is coming from in our world today. So many things sound so very good, and therein is the heart of the deception of the Antichrist system in the last days. It's going to slide in right under the surface. It's going to sound like the best thing on earth. For example, this movement towards a new world order is for the cause of peace. What could be more noble than the need of peace in our world today? And I think we should all stand firmly for it, that it is time for the wars in the world to come to an end, so we should be for peace. But on the other hand, let's not confuse what the Bible describes peace as versus the peace of this world. They're two separate things. Remember what Jesus said? He said, "My peace I give unto you. Not as the world gives, give I unto you." The only peace that this world can give is the cessation of hostilities between armies. That's the only peace we can do, is have a series of truces around the world. But that the peace that the Bible speaks of is a peace in our heart between us and God. And at the same time, environmentalism, of course it's a very good thing, it's a very important thing, but let's not confuse that with the fact that as Christians, while we're to protect the environment of this earth, we're looking for a new heavens and a new earth. Our eternal hope is not of this world, and that, once again, is the message of the Bible. The gospel of Antichrist is going to sound so very good. It is going to sound so very noble, but the key dividing line is the promise of hope here on this earth, the saving of this planet, or is the promise of the gospel the salvation of the soul? And if you keep those two things very clearly in mind, as confusing and intertwined as these things become, the true gospel will always remain true in that God is concerned for the salvation of the sinner. I'd like to close reading Hebrews chapter 11. This is speaking of these great members of the faith in times past, from the 14th verse, saying, "For they that say such things declare plainly that they seek a country. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they might have had the opportunity to have returned. But now they desire a better country, that is a heavenly. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city." That is the hope of the gospel.